Hey, what's going on everybody? Selage here, and today we're going to be looking at 5 bad habits that hold you back from improving in Fortnite. We're going to be looking at everything from editing, aiming, predictability, and so much more. With all these bad habits, I want to give you guys some actual ways to solve them. So for everything we talk about, I'll be going over a few different ways to change your approach to a situation, so be more prepared for the next time you run into this problem. Even though I enjoy build fighting as much as the next guy, if you're not in creative mode, build fighting high off the ground is only going to hurt you more than anything. Both you and your opponent are going to burn through all of your mats, so that does mean if you end up winning the fight, you're not going to get a huge refresh of mats to cover what you lost from building. If you don't get those mats, it probably won't end up as well for you, since most of the time you're going to get third party during or right after a fight. And if you're already low on mats, you're not going to have much luck defending yourself. And as well, currently there's no way to get down safely if you do build fight somewhat high. No redeploy, jump pads, or bouncers, so the higher you go, the more likely somebody like Doglover334 is going to get a double kill by chopping your builds out. Instead of trying to take height higher and higher, make sure to do your best to slow down your opponent and keep them as low to the ground as possible. That means getting height as soon as you can and flooring them off from being able to do any sort of retake. Otherwise, you can always try to start off a fight with as much damage as possible, because that typically will get your opponent to box up right away to heal up, which makes it much easier for you to ramp over them and control height right off the bat. As well, if someone is above you and you don't want to take the fight higher, chopping is always an option, but there's a couple of things that you can do that will make it nearly impossible for your opponent to protect himself from the fall. One of the most common ways besides pickaxing their walls out is editing them out. This works great since most players will try to build while falling, and since they can't build where the edited walls are, they're pretty much defenseless. I also like to throw down some cones on the areas where they'd land, so that way they can't ramp back up over you. Another fun thing to do when editing somebody out is placing traps on the ground where they'd fall. This only works if you know exactly where they are above you, but it is an easy and funny way to clean up some opponents. You could also use this opportunity to try and retake height, but make sure that you only go 1 or 2 high, otherwise they're just going to chop you right back out since you don't have too much time to support your builds. One of my biggest regrets was not jumping on the double edit binds bandwagon when it first came out. In the end, we do have edit on release, which is nearly the same speed, but we all got lucky to get a setting like this. Adapting won't always be handed to us with something like edit on release, but not picking up on these is only going to put you farther and farther behind. And if you haven't already, I highly recommend switching to edit on release. It only requires you to click your edit key once instead of twice, and in theory should make your editing twice as fast. I'll use this as an example of adapting and learning something new, because I know personally I had a tough time adapting to only clicking my edit bind once after 10 seasons of muscle memory built into my editing. I also recommend to slow yourself down and do it at a snail's pace so you know exactly what you need to do. When I first started doing it, I was doing simple edits such as one wall at a time, and then I moved up into double edits and then harder and harder. The important part is to make sure you're not rushing into the hardest possible scenario and you develop the muscle memory wrong. This is just going to make it harder when you have to relearn your muscle memory the second time through the right way. Another trick that helped me isolate when I was making a mistake with this in particular is taking off my headset and listening to my keyboard. I could pick out when I hit the edit key twice and knew when I was making mistakes easier. Since I was also listening to make sure I wasn't making mistakes, it helped keep me in check, and for some reason it was almost like once I heard the first click of my keyboard, I knew I had to stop, otherwise I would make a mistake. Each time you're learning something new, there's different tricks you can use to make sure that it's easier to understand and get down. When learning a new build technique, for example, I always turn my auto sprint off and walk through builds slowly. It always helps me to understand the order, movement, and crosshair placement that you need in order to nail a certain build. One of the simplest habits that I see players make is the bottom corner edits. This leaves you completely exposed regardless if you make the triangle or square edit. You also don't get a right hand peek, which removes any sort of advantage you could have when you have control over that wall. Because when you make that edit, you basically just go for a 50-50 aim battle, which has so many factors that could determine who wins, like how much shield you have or what shotguns each opponent has. It's just not the best thing to rely on. Now instead, the edit you should be making is the top left or top right corner of a wall. You get the right hand peek with protection, and this protection also allows you to choose when to expose yourself and gives you more power and control over the fight, since you can't be as seen as soon as you make the edit. This is a small trick, but this edit one is one of the most important ways to keep yourself protected when needed during box fights or any other situation. Now this season we've seen another change in the shotgun meta. Tac shotguns are actually useful, but most players will spray their tac shotguns and rely on aim and hitting big damage shots. But regardless of how good your aim is, relying on hitting consistent shots one after another is really not the best option. You also will end up losing way more health and shield than you really need, as you and your opponent are just trading shots back and forth hoping that you win. Now there are a couple of ways that you can turn a 50-50 aim battle into 100-0 in your favor, and it does depend on the distance of the fight. We'll first look at something that you can use at all distances, and that's ghost peeking. It's not nearly as strong as it used to be a long time ago, but you still can peek and be nearly invisible. All you have to do is position yourself in a way that your head is just below the bottom of the ramp. Then, to get the fast motion of standing up and crouching back down, use your jump bind to stand up and your crouch bind to go back down. This makes the action really quick and nearly impossible for you to be able to hit. Ghost peeking is great for long range fights against somebody with a sniper, medium range in an AR battle, and even close range with a shotgun if you can position yourself correctly. You have to be careful though, because depending on what height or distance your target is at, you'll have to position yourself farther up or down the ramp to make sure you can still hit them when standing up and they can't see you while you're crouched. This takes a little bit of trial and error to figure out the different heights and where to position yourself, but once you do, you're going to find that sweet spot a lot easier, and it's going to be much easier to incorporate into your gameplay. When in a close range engagement, controlling the edits is crucial to making sure it doesn't turn into a 50-50. Regardless of what shotgun you're using, I never recommend to open up an edit and sit there and spray a shotgun. Going for quick edits and putting shots in and closing them up right after is the only way to not 50-50. If you can catch an opponent off guard when they have their builds or pickaxe out, it's even better. That way you know for sure that they won't get a lucky reaction shot back at you. If you want to improve your aim more than just 50-50s, I recommend checking out a video I did a while back that has some great tips for all types of aiming and will go in more depth than I can in here. The worst type of player to fight against is someone who has no idea what they're doing, because if they don't know what they're doing, there's no way you can predict it. And a player's predictability can be things such as movement, build sequences, edits, etc. This makes it very easy for a good player to put in a lot of damage without being touched. But reducing your predictability is harder than it seems, as some players may know more tricks than others and could read a situation much easier. But being predictable makes it easier for you to hit for so many reasons. The path your body travels, what edits you make, when you peek. If you're doing these wrong, you're going to spend more shield and heals than necessary to finish one fight. The two situations that are most predictable is your edits and movement. Both can be devastating if you do it wrong. First, we'll look at movement, which in close range is what's going to get you tagged the most. Jumping or doing linear movement is easier to track and shoot with a shotgun, especially with jumping, as your movement is guaranteed and you can't change directions mid-jump. Instead, spam crouching and jittering back and forth is the best way to stay hard to hit, as tracking you won't be consistent and the changing directions will make it much harder for your opponents to follow you with their aim. Edits are even more important to make sure you don't mess up, because opening a hole in your builds takes away the protection that it gives, and choosing the correct timing and edit is important to keep your damage output high and to keep you protected as much as possible. Box fighting is typically when your edits count the most, and controlling as many edits as possible is pretty much crucial to winning the fight. The meta currently is getting a ramp inside of your opponent's box and editing it right away for a shot. Most of the time it does work really well, but you do have to be careful. If you're fighting somebody who's good, it's going to be rather predictable at this point, and if you make the mistake of editing without looking, things like this can happen. These bad habits may have come by accident through muscle memory, or just something like edit on release may not be around yet. Regardless of the situation, these can be fixed, and these small changes may not seem that important, but when you add 10 small changes into your playstyle, you'll see how well these actually help you in becoming a better player. But before I do head out for this video, I want to quickly mention my most recent aim map that I've released. I've talked about it in the past couple of videos, but it's by far one of the best maps I've created or seen before. It has some classic courses such as Tile Frenzy and some new ones like Popcorn. I'm going to put the code on screen and in the description. It's great for practicing aim on each of the course because it tracks your score in different time intervals. The top score on each course on November 19th will win 2,500 V-Bucks. You can check the full video in the top right corner of the screen if you want to get some more info. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to make sure you know exactly when I put out new videos. Also, make sure to follow my Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch. I post clips and stuff on Twitter and Instagram, and I stream occasionally over there on Twitch. I'm looking forward to see you all there. I'll see you guys all real soon in the next one.